I did that for years and years without ever writing a word on paper. So I would go to bed at night and I would write stories in my mind for hours.
Oh.
And the stories would go on from night to night to night. And then I started working on economics after the university until I got to a point that I realized that maybe I enjoyed writing so much more than I did
more than
economics.
More than numbers.
Yeah, more than numbers. What I wanted to write about was how a man that always felt happy about his life and always felt hopeful and optimistic about his future, how does he handle things when those things start falling apart, when his life starts falling apart. Since a very young age, I always thought about this and wondered what had to happen in my life so I wouldn't feel happy. I was working in the financial department of a software store company.
Okay.
And it was a terrible job. I had a terrible boss. My girlfriend broke up with me for the second time that period, and also a few months earlier I was in the United States when the 9/11 events happened.
We're representing a great community of readers in Romania.
Okay.
We're like, I don't know, 10,000 or
Wow.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, quite a bit, I guess.
No, it's really good for a podcast about
Thank
books.
you. Yeah, it is indeed. Thank you for being here today. It was a challenge to track you down, actually. You're a very discreet person.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
it really was.
I think I'm going to be proud of that.
Is that a normal state for a writer?
To be discreet?
To be discreet?
I never thought about it, but I would say that that nowadays, in the world that we live in, where image has such a strong meaning for everybody, and where social network is so present in our lives, with so many silly and futile things and well, whatever. I would say books are actually a small part of our lives in general. It's something that it's getting more and more left behind, and so I would say that most writers must be very discreet, not because they want to be discreet, but because the avalanche of everything else gets in the way.
Okay. How did you start writing?
I started writing well, in school. I wrote a little bit. I started writing mainly because I started paying more attention to movies. My father, well, also books, of course, but mostly movies back then. My father is a great reader, but he was also a lover of good cinema and author cinema, and I was 14, 15 years old when I started watching movies by Alfred Hitchcock and Orson Welles and other important directors that were already dead, and I started paying attention to the way that movies were constructed, that the narrative was structured, and I always enjoyed using my imagination when I was playing, when I was a kid. And at a certain point, I started very naturally to to use that way of playing with my imagination to build stories in my mind. And I would do that trying to do something similar to the movies that I was watching. Also to books, because as I said, my father was a great reader, and I started reading a lot since I was a kid, but mainly movies. And I did that for years and years without ever writing a word on paper. So I would go to bed at night and I would write stories in my mind for hours.
Oh.
And the stories would go on from night to night to night.
And you afterwards you put them on paper.
No, I wouldn't do that. It was something just
to yourself.
To myself.
Okay.
And then some years later, when I was in the end of high school and then in university, I studied economics, which has nothing to do with writing. But I back then, and it was on those years that I started writing some stories, and then I did that for some years and then I started working on economics after the university. Until I got to a point that I realized that maybe I enjoyed writing so much more than I did.
More than
economics.
More than numbers.
Yeah, more than numbers.
But you're still fond of cinema. I mean, your novel has been adapted to the big screen in 2017. Your writing is extremely cinematic. Do you write with the movie in mind?
No. That happened totally by chance.
Okay.
I never think that a book of mine can become a movie, especially because in Portugal the movie industry, it's so small. We only produce about 10 movies per year,
okay,
which is nothing. And so and we always have to have money from the government to.
I think it's the same in Romania, right?
Probably in a lot of European countries it's like that. And so no writer, no book writer at least, is thinking that his or her book can become a movie. And that happened because a really big producer in Portugal enjoyed the book, and he really connected with the story and the characters, and he decided he wanted to do this, and then he invited me to write the screenplay as well. But I'm always watching movies, and every time I'm thinking that I could also write a movie or now a TV series, which I enjoy a lot as well. The thing is that it is so difficult, and you have to work with so many people, and there are so many levels you have to go through until the movie becomes a movie. That I always think that it's so much easier for me just to write
a novel
and then give it
away
to the publisher, and they put it on bookstores. But I would love to write more for cinema.
Oh, yes. That's great. Tell us a bit about the average index of happiness. How was this born?
Well, I wrote this book 10 years ago. It came out in Portugal in 2014. Back then, Portugal was coming out of the economic crisis, as most European countries and most and a big part of the world was. I wasn't really interested in writing about the crisis itself. I was more interested in writing about a man in crisis, and I always thought that putting this man in a situation of crisis would reinforce his state of mind, and I even made an experience. I experimented writing his story during the dictatorship in Portugal, in the mid-century in the 20th century. But I wasn't. That wasn't working, and then I thought, okay, I'm just going to put him now because we just came out of a crisis, and now I can understand that the economic crisis is such a big part of the novel. It's almost like a character itself. But more important than all of that, what I wanted to write about was how a man that always felt happy about his life and always felt hopeful and optimistic about his future, how does he handle things when those things start falling apart, when his life starts falling apart. And then this goes back to 20 years early in my life, or not 20 but 15. I always felt happy about myself. I always felt very optimistic about the future, such as Danielle. And since I was very young, I would say like 16, 17, 18 years old, I was always very conscious about this, about myself, and the fact that I was apparently happier than other people around me, people that I thought had better lives than mine, and I always felt that was some kind of that defined me as a person. The fact that I was happy, because I was always happy. I remember my mother telling me many times that everything always, how would she say it? Everything was always turning out good for me.
For the best.
I didn't have any problems. And
you
of course,
were the lucky one.
Exactly. She said she would use a Portuguese expression, which is translate. Well, it doesn't. It's a Portuguese expression that says that you were born with your butt turned to the moon.
Oh, okay.
Which is like having luck. You are a lucky person.
We have something like you are born with a silver spoon in your mouth. We're a bit I don't know, more modest.
Exactly. and so of course I had problems. Of course I wasn't lucky, or more luckier than anybody else. I think that I just don't show it. I think I just go through problems with a positive attitude, and I believe that problems happen to everybody every day. So why would I feel special and cry about it?
And your character does the same. Actually.
Exactly. That's the reason. It's because I am like that, and so all this to say that since a very young age, I always thought about this and wondered what had to happen in my life so I wouldn't feel happy, or so I would feel less happy at least. And then, well, if we have time, so I'll tell the whole story.
Yes,
and
please,
then
I would have done it, but you can do it better.
In 2000 in 2001, things weren't very good in my life. I had a terrible job.
Okay.
I just finished university in economics, and I was working in the financial department of a software store company.
Okay.
And it was a terrible job. I had a terrible boss. My girlfriend broke up with me for the second time that period, and also a few months earlier, I was in the United States when the 9/11 events happened. I wasn't near the events, but I was in Florida. But I was traveling with a friend, and we were stuck in the United States, and we couldn't get out because of the how do I call it, the planes couldn't take off. And so it was
a national response, actually.
Exactly, and it was a very strange time for us, because for me and my friend, because we were stuck there. We didn't know what was going to happen, and I would call my mother, and she was crying on the phone. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew if there was going to be more attacks, or so we slept on the floor of the airport for 3 days, and everything turned out okay, but it was a very, very strange time for me, and I thought about everything in my life during the months after that, and my relationship with people and everything, and things weren't very good for me. And still, on that year, I went to get a tattoo.
Okay.
It's the only tattoo that I ever did. It's here on the back of my neck, and it's a Mandarin character that means happy.
Oh, okay.
And it's something that I wanted to do for a very, very long time.
And that was before the book.
That was before the book. That was like more than 10 years before the book. I wanted to do this for a long time because, as I said, I for many years I thought this word defined me, so I wanted to have it marked on my body.
It's your tag.
Exactly, and still on that year that things weren't great. My girlfriend broke up with me. My boss was horrible. I was rethinking everything in my life, and still I thought this word defined me. And for 10 years. I thought about this. What has to happen in my life so I can
be unhappy?
What or will I be like this forever? When my parents die, will I still feel happy? And I do believe that I will still be happy, because happiness has nothing to do with a specific moment in your life. You're not happy. You can be sad and happy at the same time, because happiness is something more. Is larger than
bigger, yeah,
than just that moment when you feel sad. And I would say more, you need to feel sad to be happy.
That's true.
Because if you don't, you
need a reference.
Exactly. If you never feel sad in your life, you don't know that you're happy. So you have to let sadness come through you and cry and
sadness.
Yeah,
make it a part of you.
Yeah, and you have to accept that is a part of your life, and so 10 years after those events, I started putting these characters on paper, and I knew that I wanted to have these 3 friends, and they would all have different perspectives toward not about happiness, but about things in life that influence happiness. And so yes, then Daniel is this very average man, at least in Portugal, average person. He has a normal job. He has a wife. He has two children. And suddenly everything falls apart. He loses his job. His wife is also unemployed and moves away with the kids to another city in Portugal. They aren't divorced, or they are still together, but they are just geographically separated. And I just wanted to know, when would he break? I wanted to know when or if he would break. I'm not going to spoil.
We love spoilers. That's okay.
No, but I really wanted to see if I would write a story where someone would break, or if someone wouldn't break. Of course, that it doesn't mean this is not a scientific thesis. This is of course this is my perspective on all of this, but. And of course, I know this is much more complex than break or not break.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to spoil it for my community. He's going break or not. No, I'm not gonna spoil it. I was wondering.
No, I would say that he at certain points he breaks, but not
it is
in
kind of a breaking,
but not
right?
in the way that we expect that he breaks.
Indeed.
Everybody breaks, and I break. I have this feeling with happiness that I'm always optimistic. But of course that I get sad, and of course that I cry, and I have a lot of bad moments in my life. But those are good moments as well.
Indeed.
When I look at them in retrospective, I think they were very good moments for me. I think they were very important for what happened after.
And for growing. Actually.
Exactly. I wouldn't be what I am today if I didn't have that horrible boss.
Yeah, that's true. So everything went from bad to worse for you and your characters. One of them ends up in prison. The other one has a depression. The other one, as you said, is getting a divorce or not. We shall see. Is that also a form of, social criticism? Vorbim de câteva luni încoace despre importanța lecturii și despre cartea care te face neprost, ca să citezi niște băieți mai deștepți decât mine. Și am tot vorbit despre faptul că nu există scriitori fără cititori, la fel nu există podcast fără urmăritori. Ne place misiunea pe care o avem, ne dorim să o ducem mai departe, ne dorim să dăm cu clișeele de pământ. Nu putem de unele singure, avem nevoie de ajutorul vostru, așa că like, subscribe, bell notification și ne mai vedem într-un episod.
Well, it can be looked at it that way, and I think in the end it is, but it wasn't my purpose. It wasn't my objective back then. What I did that because during the economic crisis in Portugal, in Europe, I realized I read and I was told a lot of stories that for me sounded very absurd, and I love absurd things, absurd stories. I write many books for children, and I always use these absurd events or absurd characters in my stories for kids. But in my novels for adults, I always do it as well. Only the absurds are a little bit different, are not so surrealistic, or are more realistic. And I was, without even noticing, I was collecting stories in my mind, and these absurd things. For example, I remember watching an Oprah Winfrey episode, where she was talking about the economic crisis in the United States, and then she had a segment about people that were living in their offices.
Okay.
And which I thought, this is so bizarre. This could be a strange movie where people. This could be a dystopic movie where people go and live in their offices because they can't pay the rent, and so they are secretively living under their desks and nobody knows. And
as Daniel does,
as then the character does, and I just collected it and kept it in my mind. And then I read a story about these kids in Portugal. Not these kids. 3 different events in Portugal where kids beat up homosexual, how do you call it, homeless people, in different parts of the country. And so during those years, I thought, not just maybe because of the economic crisis, we were having other social crises, and there was a lot of people were going against each other, and it was in Portugal they talked about it on the news as well. This value crisis on the values of society, And was, like I said, I was always collecting all these little stories and events, and then I just naturally use them in the book, and of course that all of this together makes a very big social criticism.
That's true.
I can understand.
So you take your inspiration from everywhere.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yes.
You need to be a good observer to be a good writer.
Yes, I think so. But it's something that I don't do on purpose. I think that I just do it naturally. I think people interest me, and you sometimes you don't even do it for the best reasons. Sometimes you just look at people and you pay attention to people because you don't agree with what someone is doing and you just want to criticize that person. But for that you end up paying attention. But and of course, since I became a writer, I'm paying more and more attention. So when I'm in a restaurant, I'm always looking at what people are doing or listening to conversations. Which I'm not ashamed of. We all do that, and I think it's important that we pay attention to each other,
to listen to each other.
Yeah.
You also write for kids. You just mentioned, and I was wondering which one of these publics, grown-ups and young public, is more demanding for you.
I would say definitely the novels for adults, because children books for me come very naturally. I don't have to think much about it. I don't have to rationalize that much about it. What I do, and I just found out what I'm going to say. I found it out many years after I started writing, because I started writing both things more or less at the same time.
At the same time, okay.
And about maybe 8 years later, I found out that when I write for children, I tend to look inside at what I am, but especially at what I was when I was a kid. So I'm really paying attention to my memories and to the way that I feel, and to the way that I used to feel when I was a kid, the way that I would talk to my friends, the way that I would look at everything. And when I write a novel for adults, I tend to look outside. So I'm very much paying attention to the news and to people around me and to conversations in cafes and everything. And I always did that since my first books, but now I'm very conscious about it. And I think that looking inside, it's something much more natural and much more fluid than looking outside and having to rationalize about what you're seeing. And so when more and more I enjoy more writing for children, because it's not so demanding. That I'm just becoming more lazy, and writing for children is something much more natural. There's another thing. I maybe it's because I've been doing this for almost 20 years. Writing for children, it's much more fun than writing for adults. Not just the moment of writing, but everything that comes after. The interviews and the presentations and the autographs.
Kids are more fun, right?
Kids are much more fun. There's no doubt about it. So the questions the kids ask are much more fun. They are not criticizing you as much as the adults are. The adults always want to find something for you to fail, and kids are much more sincere. So if they don't like you, they just say they don't like you, and I'm really okay with that. It's no problem if someone doesn't like you. I just don't like the cynicism that adults have, and I'm really talking about adults in general, on social network and all that. And so it's much more fun to write for kids.
Did you write for your kids? I
No,
think you have 2 kids, right?
I have 2 kids, but I started writing for kids many years before they were born. Of course, since then I wrote a couple of stories because they asked me, or I have a book that started between the 3 of us. Actually, I have this children's book which is called in English, which it's something like the gross alphabet.
Okay.
So
the gross
alphabet. So it's about a boy that misbehaves all the time, and it's one of those books where every page is a letter, and every letter has a word associated, and so it's all about these gross words.
That should have been fun.
so it's like A, it's from something, and it's a gross word that
you can use it. That's okay.
No. I can't. I would have to be translated into English now. But and so I started this book on the car every morning when we'd go to school, because when they were starting to read and write, and I wanted them to know the letters and the words, and I would ask them, tell me a gross word.
Wow, that's a good tip for young parents.
Yes, in Portugal, a lot of parents read this book and are starting to do it, because I myself was becoming tired of asking them for animals starting with a C, or
colors, or
exactly, or names of people, and they were getting bored of that as well. So I started asking them about gross words, which is something that they really like, and I do too.
Oh, okay.
And then at a certain point we started making little sentences that would tell a story, and I started writing them.
You just made my son paying attention to this discussion with the gross words. That's great. I think this novel, The Average Index of Happiness, is also suitable for young public, for young adults. A lot of characters are really, really young here. Did you thought of that while writing it?
No, it's I didn't thought about. I mean, I realized that when I was doing it, but it wasn't something that I did on purpose. But I think I'm very I was always very interested in thinking and writing about young people. It's I think it's an incredible age of a human being, that those few years where you stop being a child and you start becoming an adult, because it's a period of changes, and it's a period of discovery, and so suddenly your world is not only a room; it's like a whole park. So you start exploring, and in every process of exploration you're going to cross boundaries, and those moments where you cross boundaries it's what I'm really interested, because when you cross a boundary, a few things can happen. You can realize you crossed the boundary and you step back and you never cross that boundary again, and which means that you learn that you became more closer to become an adult, or you cross the boundary and you don't realize you crossed it and you keep on going, and sometime in the near future you're going to fall and it's going to hurt, and then maybe you're going to come back. Or sometimes you crossed the boundary, but you still want to go further. And all of this, I think it's fascinating, because I would say most of us adults, we are good people.
Indeed.
We have our mistakes. We do some bad things once in a while, but in general, we are good people. So we have to realize that those couple of years during adolescence, those 3-4 years, they work. Somehow they do work. We do learn to cross those boundaries and step back, or we do learn when we get hurt, and all of this humanity figured this out very, very wisely. And that fascinates me. So I use a lot of young people, young characters in my novels, because of this, because I think the young characters show us that the way we are as adults, it's not arbitrary, that we had to figure it out, we had to work. We just don't remember. We always look at those years of the adolescence as very troubled years, and we are always very angry about them because nobody understood us. But they were very, very important for us.
It's actually a learning process.
We should be proud of those years because we had to figure it out, how to be good people.
It's an awarded novel, and I was wondering, are awards important for a writer?
Oh, I would say so. I think so. I think I can imagine that they are not important for a couple of writers, but I don't know any of those writers, and I'm friends with a lot of writers. I think an award is all. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the most important thing that can happen to a writer, because it's not the most important thing that can happen to me. I think I mean it's amazing that when it happens, and I don't want to be very cynical about it, but I would say that it can also depend on the award.
Of course,
because there are awards that that it wasn't that hard to get it. It depends on the jury of the award. Who are these people? And it depends on what happens after that award. In this case, the European Prize for Literature, it was life-changing. So, of course, I'm really, really
I think
proud.
You're the second Portuguese that...
I was the third.
The third.
And I'm friends with both authors that
won
before. And when they announced the prize for this book, I got a message for both of them telling me your life is going to change. Because it was true, because it happened to them and it happened to me. This award, it has a part of the award, it's money, which is always great.
A good incentive.
I'm not going to
deny
refuse
that.
it. But then there's this incredible part which is the European Union gives money to publishing houses all over Europe publish these books that win this prize. And so since then this book has been translated into more than 15 languages, and because of these other books of mine have been translated. So how could this prize be a bad
Not
thing?
important, yeah. And that also comes with the public's recognition. How about your relationship with your readers?
Portugal is a very small country, and going back to the beginning of our conversation, where writers are more or less discreet, and the public is not
that vocal.
So fortunately, we do have social networking where we can have this contact with our readers, but I do enjoy talking. I love talking to someone that reads my books and that has some new and original insight about my books. And I love when someone tells me something about my book that I never thought, because I think Sorry?
Like what?
Well, because I do believe that the best literature, it's the one that gives space to the reader to feel with their thoughts and their feelings and their life's experience. And so when they read the book, in the end, it's actually a different book than the one that I wrote, because they're in there as well. And so sometimes I get people to tell me that some book was incredible because they thought a lot about friendship. Mm-hmm. And when I start thinking, and I didn't write anything about friendship, but I don't say anything. I just thank them, and it's amazing that they found something about friendship in that story, and I love that. So I really enjoy going to book fairs in Portugal and in festivals.
In Romania.
In Romania, I love the opportunity that literature has given me to travel all over the world. I always loved traveling, and I always traveled a lot. And for instance, I was never here in Romania. I was in a few countries nearby, but I always wanted to come here, and because of my books, now I'm here. Mm-hmm. And this is so strange, and I'm so grateful for this, because of my work, which is something that I'm very proud of, and something that is that's such a big part of my life. Because of that, now I can come here and know this country and know the people of this country. It's incredible.
So it's good to be a writer.
For me, it's amazing.
Okay,
it's amazing.
For me, it's amazing to be a reader, and it was.
Oh no, for me as well. No. Actually, for me, it's more amazing to be a reader than to be a writer.
How come?
Because of what I was saying, that when you read a book you can fill with your own stuff.
Okay.
When I write a book, I can only fill it with my stuff.
Mm-hmm,
but every time I read a book from someone else, I'm getting stuff from all of these people. And although writing gives me an opportunity to think about life and the world and myself, reading gives me so much more perspective. Mm-hmm. and different perspectives about the world, and I can learn so much more when I read.
That's great. I never thought of it. Well, it was a joy to read your book. Thank you so much for it. Thank you so much for making time to be here with us today.
Thank you so much for.
But thank you. No, but thank you.
And thank you for everybody that's listening. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and
really? I'm going to send you the link.
Okay, perfect.
You just subscribe and notification and everything. I know nothing about it. I have a team for that.
No, that's great.
David e aici pentru Festivalul Internațional de Carte Transilvania și mulțumesc din suflet organizatorilor care ne-au dat ocazia să ne cunoaștem, și mulțumesc lui Vali pentru locația asta absolut minunată care se numește Librarium în Cluj. Și mulțumesc lui Ionuț pentru că și-a făcut timp să vină să filmeze cu noi, și mulțumesc fiului meu că a avut răbdare să stea cu mine preț de 3 interviuri întregi, și pentru că nu știu nici să termin așa cum nu știu nici să încep. Ne vedem tura viitoare.